Okay, good afternoon. In this section, we'll try to talk about understanding teaching, what teaching is, and what learning is. And to make it a little bit smaller, I'll be recording only the understanding of what teaching means in the first section, and then we'll do another video trying to explain what we mean by learning. So it's good to be able to understand what is it that we understand by teaching and what is it that we understand by learning, because our understanding of what is teaching will determine the way we will actually be doing our teaching. You know, we all have a certain presupposition, a certain understanding, which is shaped by our own experiences sometimes, not necessarily by the things that we read. Of course, all of those things will shape it, but sometimes it is the way we have been taught that we tend to also be teaching. So the way we have been taught and the way we have seen others teach, that kind of shapes our understanding of what is teaching and what is learning. And therefore, that understanding of what is teaching will also determine the way we also do our own teaching as well. So it's important for us to understand, okay, I'm a teacher and I'm going to be teaching. So when I'm teaching, what is it? What does it actually mean? When I say I taught, what do I really mean? So we will try to be able to do that. So as we begin, this is my objective for both this one and also the one that will be coming after this one. So you would be able to describe and you'll be able to define what is teaching and what is learning. You would also explain the possible approach. We'll be looking at 3 possible approaches towards teaching. And finally, we'll try to see the different component parts in teaching. What is the role of the Holy Spirit in that? So the part about learning and the part about the approach and the Holy Spirit, we'll be looking at that in the next session. So in a minute, I would like you to just pause for a minute, pause the video here, and try to write a definition of teaching in the way you understand it. So take a minute, take out a paper and write down what is it, what is teaching for you. So do that for a minute. Okay, I hope you have been able to write something. There are many possible definitions that you could write. And if we were to look at the ones you have written, let me just go back. If were to look at the things that you have written, we will find different things. We will find some ideas where some of you may have said it is the transferring of information from the teacher to the students. It could be causing students to understand something. So it would be something to do with the brain, information coming to the brain, the students understanding something. But I hope there will be at least some of you who would also understand teaching to be something to do with shaping, modifying, influencing one's behavior, developing some kind of a skill for it. Some of you would say it is a process. It's not something that just happens. It is a process. So there will be different ones from what you have gathered. But based on what you would say, if we were in the classroom and if we were doing this, we would definitely come to saying it is some kind of a process, where the teacher creates some kind of an experience for the students to be engaged in, to be involved in some activities that they will be doing. So the students are engaged, and through that engagement, they would gain some knowledge, some understanding of what you're teaching. But then that knowledge they understand is supposed to go down to their heart, transform their attitudes, transform their values, and from there it goes out to shaping their behavior. Okay, so that will be what will be happening. There are different definitions, as you can see here. One of the definitions from the dictionary itself, it says it is causing to learn or acquire knowledge or a skill. It is an activity defined in terms of causation. So teaching, according to this one, teaching has to do with causation. It's an activity that causes something in the students. One definition says intended behavior for which the aim is to induce learning. It's an intended behavior. There is an intention, intentionally designed behavior activity, which will do what? Which will cause some kind of transformation, some kind of learning. So it is intentional, and it is a behavior or some kind of activity which will do that. The aim is to induce learning in the students. So the teacher intentionally plans, designs his teaching, his activity in such a way that it will induce learning to the students. The second one says teaching is aimed at changing the ways, okay? Changing the ways, that has to do with the behavior in which other persons can or will behave. So it has to do with a change in the behavior. The last one, the third one here, says it's that array of activities. There are different activities that the teacher will be doing, employs, and to transform intentions and curriculum materials and conditions that promote learning. So it is activities that the teacher is designing, and the intention, the desire is to promote some kind of learning. So from all of these ones, what we can see is it is intentional. That means you know what you want to be doing. And in order for you to be able to do what you are planning, you will organize some kind of activities. You will design certain activities. That means your teaching process is well designed. You plan it. You plan it for what purpose? For the purpose of inducing learning, causing the students to learn, causing the students to change in their behaviors, okay? Teaching involves implementing strategies that are designed to lead learners to the attainment of certain goals, okay? So teaching has to have some kind of a goal. So you're implementing some kind of strategies. For what purpose? For the purpose of attaining some kind of goals that you set. So you don't go into a classroom without any goals. You come into a classroom with a specific purpose. I want to achieve by the end of this class 1, 2, 3. Similar to what we just did. We have an objective for this session. We have an objective for that will happen in the next session as well. And finally, the fifth one here is teaching is an interpersonal, interactive activity. That means there is relationships, engagement with one another, which is undertaken for the purpose of helping one or more change the ways in which they will behave. So this again has to do with the behavior, but in this case, the new thing this brings is interaction, the idea of engagement, being engaged with one another. So if we take all of these ones, it basically goes down to what we said earlier. So it is intentionally organized activities or a process. Those activities and processes will lead to some kind of change. The desire is some kind of change, some kind of transformation, as we've said in the previous PowerPoint presentations, some kind of transformation, but that transformation is in what area? It has to do with the students knowing something, so the change could be in their knowing, it will be with their heart, but resulting in their behavior. When you look at Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 1 and chapter 5 as well, here we will basically be able to see the root word for teaching goes down to learning, okay? To teach means to learn. So this, it has to do with the Hebrew word here. The root verb of the to teach has to do to learn. So that you can't be separating the idea of teaching from the idea of learning. If you're saying that you have taught, something must happen, and that is the students must learn. If the students don't learn, and if all you've done is you acting out, dramatizing, you being the best actor there, without the students necessarily learning, then basically learning has not occurred. or teaching has not happened. So the teacher has not taught until the student has learned will be the principle. So if you're in the classroom and if you're lecturing, the students are listening, you're speaking lots of words and they are just writing, this they will call is a pit of passivity, and that's not where we want to go. We want to go towards causing the students to learn. So who do you think is responsible if the students are not learning? If a teacher does something and the students are doing things, I don't know, in a classroom setting, who do you think is responsible if students are not necessarily learning? So you can think about it for a minute. Is it the teacher? Is it the student? Who's responsible for it? Okay. So again, if we were in a classroom, we will hear different ideas. There will be some of you who will say the teacher. There will be few of you who will say, very few of you, maybe one of you, will say it is the student who's responsible. Most of you would agree that both of them are responsible, because if the teacher does everything that's possible, but if the student doesn't do his part, if the student doesn't study, if the student doesn't take time to integrate, reflect on the things that they're learning, see how what they're learning is impacting their own life, then learning would not happen. The student wouldn't learn. So it has to involve both of them. But I think there is a huge responsibility on the teachers, and we'll look at some maxims, some principles related to it. The first one is teachers are responsible to cause the students to learn. The teacher has a responsibility for causing the students to learn. Why? Because the teacher is the one with authority within the classroom. He is one who ends up controlling a number of the different activities. Um, I will come to that point on the third one when I come to the third point. I'll be explaining the first one again. The second one we need to remember is teachers stand accountable to God for their influence. Now, God has given us that responsibility. Not just the responsibility, He gave us the privilege of being able to teach. I don't know which ministry you're involved in, but whatever ministry you're in, the people that God has given you, He has given them to you, and He has placed them in your hands for you to have an influence on them. Now, at some point, when we see Christ face to face, we will be held accountable for that. I feel like we will be asked at that point, I gave you this many people into your hands, and I gave them to you so that you would teach, you would influence them, you would grow them, and you'll be asked, what is it that you have done? So to what extent are we being faithful to the ministry that God has given us? To what extent are we responsible? Are we faithful in the work that we're doing? Or is it just job? So we need to ask ourselves, because we will be held accountable for what God has placed on our hands and the kind of influence we have on them. The third one is this one, and it will tie to the first one. Teachers are responsible. Why? Because they control the subject, they control the style, they control the setting, they control the speaker, they control everything. Now, if we were in a classroom, this is what I do to them. You may be glad that you're not in the classroom, because I will ask them, okay, stand up, and everybody stands up. And I'll ask them, hold your ears. And you know what they will do? They will hold their ears. And I'll say to them, touch the nose of the person that's next to you. And they will touch the nose. And I can tell them anything. I can tell them to do anything. And guess what they will do? They will do everything that I have told them. That shows you the amount of authority that God has given you as a teacher. He has given you so much authority in a classroom setting. You control everything that happens there. Now, in a classroom setting, when you go into the classroom, none of the students will come to you and tell you, you need to teach this, you need to teach it this way, እንደዚህ አድርጋችሁ ሌክቸር አድርግ፣ እንደዚህ አድርገህ ቪዲዮ ፓወርፖይንት እየተጠቀምክ አስተምር ምናምን ብሎ የሚናገራችሁ አስተማሪ የለም። ማንም እንደዛ ያላችሁም። ያንን ሁሉ የመቆጣጠር ኃላፊነት የናንተ ነው። ክፍሉን እንዴት ነው አሬንጅ የምታደርጉት? ወንበሩን እንዴት ነው የምታስቀምጡት? የቱ ጋር ነው እናንተ የምትቆሙት? አንድ ቦታ ቆማችሁ ትቀራላችሁ ወይስ ክፍል ውስጥ ትዞራላችሁ? ያን ሁሉ የሚቆጣጠረው ማን ነው? እናንተ ናችሁ። Because you control everything. You control the content you'll be teaching, you control the way you'll be teaching, you control the way you'll set up the classroom, you control everything. And because you have control over all of those things, you as a teacher and I, of course, are responsible for the influence that we have in a classroom. If you look at this one carefully, and especially look at the one that's underlined, you will see that there is a secret. See if, let me give you a minute, look at it and see if you can figure out the secret there. Okay. So if you read it from here and go to the left, you will see it says a teacher is in control. So a teacher is what? A teacher is in control. You are in control in a classroom. And that is an amazing authority he has given you. And it's an amazing privilege that God has given you. But that means with that privilege, with that authority, comes also responsibility. That's why you and I will be held accountable and responsible before God for the kind of influence we have. So how much do we take the teaching ministry that God has given us seriously? Because God has given us those authority, all that privilege of being able to teach, but with that there is accountability and responsibility. A fourth one is teachers should judge their success by the success of their students. Your success, how much you're successful, is determined by the success of your students. Just by going into a classroom and finishing up the notes that you have prepared doesn't mean you are successful. Unless the students understand what you have been teaching, they are understanding it and it is impacting their life. When it is understood and it is showing result, it's impacting their life, their behavior, the way they live, their obedience to God, then you are successful. But just because you went into the classroom and you were able to just pour out some information up into the air somewhere, it doesn't mean you actually taught. Because we said you taught only when the students have learned. Until the students have learned, you really actually have not taught. So your success as a teacher is determined by the success of the students. Finally, teachers impact more by their character and commitment than their communication. What is most impactful is your behavior, your character, and not necessarily by the quality of speech you have. Your eloquence is not what matters. Really, you're able to impact most by the way you live your life. People see your life, and your life has the greatest impact. If you come to church and you see a pastor who's going to be preaching, and you know that person was a messed up life, has a messed up life. You've seen him in certain places where he is doing some things that is not expected as a believer. Would you listen to him? You won't. You probably will shut him down automatically. If you don't leave, you at least will not be listening to that person. So your impact on your students is determined by your life, your character. So may the Lord help us to shape our lives in light of His Word so that our life as well as our teaching will be impactful. So if you remember, if you think back of your teachers, favorite teachers, and I would have asked you this, but if you think back, you will remember the people that have been influential in your life, not because of the content they were teaching you. You probably won't remember the things they taught, but you remember them for their character. You remember them for the way they were relating with you, for the way they loved you, for the way they respected you. for the way that they have invested themselves in getting ready to teach in class and all of those ones. So it's their character that's most important, impactful than the things that they say. Finally, the teachers exist to serve students. This is very important. Why do we exist? ከተባለ as teachers, we exist to serve teachers, to serve the students. ያው አማርኛውም ቃል አገልጋይ አይደለ? እኛ ምንድነን ከተባለ አገልጋዮች ነን። አገልጋይ ከተባለ ለራሱ አይደለም ኤግዚስት የሚያደርገው ለማን ነው? ለሚያገለግለው ሰው ነው። እንደ አስተማሪ ኤግዚስት የምናደርገው ለምንድነው ከተባለ የተሰጡንን ተማሪዎች እነሱን ለማገልገል እነሱን ለማስተማር። ስለዚህ ክፍል ውስጥ ስንመጣው የምንመጣው ወደ ክፍል ውስጥ ለራሳችን የሆነ ነገር ጌይን ለማድረግ ራሳችንን ከፍ ለማድረግ የማስተማር ጥማታችንን ለማርካት ምናምን ሳይሆን የምንመጣው ወደ ክፍል የምንመጣው ዋንኛው ዓላማ ለተማሪዎቻችን ብለን ነው። ተማሪዎቻችን የሆነ ነገር እንዲያውቁ ከማወቃቸው የተነሳ ህይወታቸው እንዲለወጥ የእግዚአብሔርን ቃል እንዲያውቁ በእግዚአብሔር ቃል የተሰሩ ሰዎች እንዲሆኑ። ስለዚህ ሁሉ ነገር ለምንድን ነው ከተባለ ለተማሪዎቹ ነው። ስለዚህ the reason we exist is one, and that is for the sake of the students, that the students will know God, will live in obedience to God, and will bring glory to God in the way they live their lives. And we, you and I, are instruments for that. So, cause to learn, the teacher should accept the responsibility of causing the students to learn. So, ምንድነው ማለት ነው? ማስተማር ማለት ምንድነው? What is it teaching? Teaching is causing students to learn. And that causation, that change in learning has to do with, obviously has to do with our cognitive part, our affective part, and the behavior, the psychomotor aspect of it as well. So if teaching is causing to learn, students to learn, what barriers do we face in trying to do that? So let me just say a few things here and we'll finish this session. So we want to teach, and teaching is causing the students to learn. Now, in causing the students to learn, we will have different barriers. And those barriers have to do with a number of things. It would have to do with the students, it would have to do with the teachers, it would have to do with the environment. So there will be a number of possible barriers. The students may have issues. They may be struggling with circumstances. The situation in the country, in their neighborhood, in their homes, may be issues. The issues in the church, maybe. All of those issues will occupy their minds so much they're not fully attentive for the class or the work. Their backgrounds, educational backgrounds, their capability for English, technology, even in this case, and all of those ones could be possible barriers. There could be a barrier that has to do with the teacher, the teacher's lack of preparation, lack of education, lack of technology, technological things, personal issues with the teacher. There could be environmental things, classroom setup, like this one. This is not the best way of teaching necessarily, but it is working. Technology is okay, but this is not necessarily the best way to do it. Okay, so if it is in a classroom setting, is there enough space? Is there some technology for us to be able to use? And all of those things related with environment, related with the teacher, related with the students, could contribute for as a barrier for the lack of teaching to happen in a classroom. So for you and me, we need to recognize what are the possible barriers here. What could become a barrier to keep my students from learning? And ahead of time, you try to work on it. As long as you figure it out, as long as you know what a possible barrier is, then you work at how do I solve this? How can I remove this barrier so that I can reach my students? Okay, so understanding those possible barriers will help. Okay, I hope this is clear and it has helped us to understand what we mean by teaching. Okay, so we'll finish it here and we'll pick up with our definition and understanding of what learning is in a minute. Bless you.